All right, welcome back to the Contrarians. This is another Dark Horse episode. This is one of these panel situations where we kind of go through, a less loved album by a band, and we break it down. We see if it is worthy of more praise than it kind of got at the time, sort of thing. And we've got one from Pink Floyd today. This is the Division Bell. And we've got Tom and Bicycle Legs here to help us out with this album. How you guys doing?
Great.
Good. Thanks.
Yeah, good to hear. So I'll just mention just a few kind of factual things about this first of all. So yeah, this is the big bright Pink Floyd. We obviously don't have Roger Waters in the band. This was released March 28th, 1994. It's the follow-up to A Momentary Lapse of Reason, long time before this. So we've got essentially a David Gilmour and Richard Wright and Nick Mason album, but there's a fair bit of, John Caron and Guy Pratt and even Polly Sampson, David Gilmour's wife, involved with this. And more so than anything, a lot of David Gilmour, I think. I think this is quite a David Gilmour album. The record went... The record went 3 times platinum. There's a big tour, brought in like $100 million, 5 million tickets sold. And it resulted in the Pulse Live album as well. But yeah, by 1999, so not much further than this, 5 years later, it was triple platinum, which is pretty crazy. Produced by Bob Ezrin and David Gilmour, recorded in a lot of different studios, David Gilmour's place, of course, as well. But yeah, it's definitely a sister album to A Momentary Lack of Reason. Is that right? Yeah. And not The Endless River, right? It's not really a sister album to that, because that's basically, almost like an instrumental album. But yeah, we've got these two glaring albums missing Roger Waters, and they have, I would say, a similar sort of vibe to them. But I'm going to leave it there, and let's turn it over to Tom first to give us his rundown of this record and what he thinks of the Division Bell.
Excellent. Thank you. Waterless Floyd. That's where we're at. We did Momentary Lapse of Reason recently, and here we are with the second record that, as you're saying, is very Gilmour led. But I made a couple notes just so I'm not wandering all over the place. But my first note says Rick Wright is back. So to me, this is the album that really Rick is back full in the band. There is a if you look on YouTube, they have this video where they're announcing the Division Bell tour, and it's sponsored by Volkswagen, and they're sitting there and 3 guys at a table with the microphones, and people are asking. And one of the questions that was really telling was somebody asks Rick, are you a full member, or are you still on getting paid as a session guy? And he pipes up immediately and says, no, I am not a session man. I'm fully in the band now. It's interesting to watch. But you notice his presence. I mean, Momentary Lapse, he's tacked on at the very end. He has a couple of things that he does, but really most of this record was done by the time he got back in the fold. And it really, he's just sort of actually we were joking around that his name is actually smaller font. If you look at the credits, it's Nick Mason, Gilmour, and then they have smaller font Rick Wright. So anyway, as you said, they're coming off a huge money spinning tour with the Momentary Lapse tour. It was hugely successful. I was there at Giant Stadium in 1988 or whatever it was. People were going bananas because everyone was just so happy that Pink Floyd was back. I mean, that's really that Momentary Lapse was just on the goodwill of just people wanting Floyd back. And once they saw the name Pink Floyd, they didn't matter. I mean, it was like, oh my God, they're back. Most average people, I shouldn't say that. I mean, most Floyd fans are very Roger Waters, loyal.
Cognizant. Yeah.
What's that?
Cognizant.
Yeah, at least cognizant of it. Right. Yeah. But I knew a lot of people in high school that were like, oh yeah, Pink Floyd. Like they didn't know. They just were like happy that Pink Floyd was back. So anyway, the lawsuits are over. Roger is still carping from the sidelines, but it's basically all the lawsuits are done. So I mean, really, they're going into this record with a lot more confidence, a lot more relaxed. they, you know, they go in, they basically do jams like they used to. They kind of record this old school. They go in, the three of them, and they just start jamming at Gilmour's studio. And they just kind of throw down a bunch of jams and whatever. They kind of start sorting through the jams and deciding which ones were good and which ones weren't, voting on them and all that stuff. So I bought this the week it came out. I remember grunge was just hot. I mean, at the time it was like, you know, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, you know, you name it. All this grunge was just at the top of its power. And I remember this album coming out, but I was excited because I've always been a Pink Floyd fan, so I ran out to get it. And it definitely is still, they're not following trends. They're doing their Pink Floyd thing.
Oh yeah.
And it works, you know, it works. For me, I enjoy this record quite a bit. I think I love the cover, first of all. I think it's an excellent cover. Love it. And when I saw it, I was like, yeah, I like that cover. Obviously Hypnosis is back. But I listened to it again today just to kind of do a quick recap of it, and it kind of hit me the same way it always has, where I feel like the first four songs on this record are excellent. I think Cluster 1 is a great instrumental, very moody. I mean, it's perfect opener. What Do You Want From Me is kind of a slow bluesy kind of jam with a lot of Gilmour tasty guitar licks. Pulls Apart has a really melodic, acoustic-y kind of great, again, just has a great atmosphere to it, in my opinion, and really melodic. Marooned is an excellent instrumental, and again, it's the Rick Wright jazzy chords. I mean, that's what I have written down as a note. Like, you can tell this feels a little bit like, you know, Any Color You Like from Dark Side, or something like that, you know. But then, in my opinion, in the middle, it sort of sags for me. Like, a Great Day for Freedom is another great song. So the first five songs I really enjoy. Wearing the Inside Out is the Rick Wright's lead vocal song, and for some reason this song just doesn't, it feels like a letdown for me. For some reason, I think a lot of people probably like this one because it's Rick singing, but I just don't. It kind of sounds to me like the love theme from if you listen to it, it's like I can't unhear it now. It's like, it sounds like, you know, the love scene from Lethal Weapon or something. And then but but I love the lyrics. I mean, the lyrics are him coming back to life, which is, you gotta cheer that up. Take It Back sounds to me like U2 or Simple Minds or something. It's like, I don't know, it's okay. And then Coming Back to Life, it's okay. Again, I feel like it's all right. But then Keep Talking, I love. I think Keep Talking it bounces back at the end with Keep Talking, I think is an excellent track with great Gilmour guitar on it, and the Stephen Hawking talking, and, you know, all we have to do is keep talking. And it's, again, the communication theme on this record. Goes throughout the whole album. It's all about communication. There's obviously a lot of veiled messages to Roger Waters within the whole record. Lost for Words is another great, I think is another good song, and High Hopes is just excellent. I love High Hopes. I think it ends very, very strong with that song. And it's funny, after I listened to the record, that was the song that was just in my head, kind of, that it has that, the biggest compliment I can give it is it kind of has that almost like a Comfortably Numb vibe, where you can keep going forever on that chord progression at the end with the solo. It could just go on forever. And Gilmour's doing his slide guitar, and there's an excellent version of that on this. This is a great DVD, and when he does High Hopes on this, it's awesome. And they're hitting the bell, and he's doing his slide guitar solo, and it's just live, it really comes to life. I do have Pulse. It's pretty good. For some reason, this hasn't hit me as hard. I mean, and some of the songs they do on here are the ones that I just said I don't like as much, like Take It Back, Coming Back to Life. The songs that they do on this record, on this live disc, aren't the ones that I love as much. But yeah, I would say, you know, if I have to rank this, you know, I gave Momentary Lapse a 6. It's like barely a 6. Like, it's like 5 3/4. Like, it's only, you know, I gave it a 6 to be generous. This album, I would say, is closer to an 8 for me. I go back to this record a lot. I listen to it a lot. I would say it's right. If I had to rank, I'd say it's right below the classic. Like, when you start going through it, and Floyd have a lot of classics, it's after, all the Dark Side, Wish You Were Here, Animals, Atom Heart Mother, Metal, The Wall, all the ones that I love. It would just come right below that 10-star tier, where they have 6 albums for me that are just perfect. But it would come right in the middle somewhere, because I don't like More or Omagama, or there's some albums I just don't listen to that much. Lost Real Secrets I don't listen to that much, even though I kind of like it. So this one would come above those. So to me, and like you said, Martin, this is a David Gilmour record. I mean, David Gilmour is just, his paw prints are just on every song, and he's playing some great guitar, and he sounds great singing. I didn't say that earlier. His singing is just fantastic on this, in my opinion. So I enjoy it. That's my review.
Yeah, it's funny, the one you mentioned, the U2 Simple Minds thing. I was thinking Big Country as well at the same time, right? With that one, Take It Back. And speaking of David, there's some amazing acoustic guitar soloing, which is kind of wild, on Lost for Words, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So there's some Dire Straits kind of things going on here, and it is very David Gilmour, and it reminds me of About Face quite a bit.
Yes.
Album as well. So, but I'll leave it at that. Let's turn it over to Daniel. Bicycle Legs. What do you got?
Okay. Well, I'm going to go straight ahead and say I really like this album. To me, you guys have been talking about how this is a very David Gilmour record. To me, this is a Pink Floyd record. Like, a lot of people think no Roger, no Pink Floyd. I don't think I can convince those people that that you can have Pink Floyd without Roger. But Roger left the band. He left the band in 1985. They had every right to keep going. Momentary Lapse of Reason is not really a Pink Floyd record, though, simply because Rick Wright and Nick Mason have virtually nothing to do with that record. Rick Wright plays a little bit of keyboards. Nick Mason, even though he's listed as one of the band members, he's in the picture, all that sort of thing. I don't know that he plays any drums at all on that record. Maybe a couple of tom-tom fills, and that's about it. Exactly.
Yeah.
But, this record, on the other hand, is a Pink Floyd record. Nick is back, Rick is back. They're both playing on all the tracks. Rick is contributing to the songwriting. Sure. I mean, Dave Gilmour is leading the band. He's the main songwriter. He's the singer for almost all the tracks. But this is a band record. Even though you have extra people filling out different roles and that sort of thing, this is first and foremost a band record. As Tom pointed out, a lot of these tracks started off with jams, just the three of them. Or I think it may have even been the three of them plus Guy Pratt. But this is a really good record. And I don't know that I can really disagree much with what Tom said about the various tracks. I mean, Cluster 1 is a great sort of opening instrumental, very eerie and that sort of thing. You get What Do You Want From Me, which kind of cops a bit of a lick from Have a Cigar.
Yeah,
It's definitely got that same sort of feel to it, but then it goes in a completely different direction, which I think is a valid thing to do. Take something from your past and then go on a new path with it, rather than just rewriting the song. It doesn't sound like Have the Cigar at all, except for that sort of opening lick that's in it. There is a theme to this record. Like, it's not a concept album, but there's definitely a theme going through this record about sort of lack of communication or miscommunication, that sort of thing. I mean, yeah, those songs in the middle, I quite like Wearing the Inside Out. Maybe that's just a sentimental thing because it is Rick singing. But I think it's quite a good song. I definitely agree with Take It Back. Definitely got a bit of a U2 vibe, but a lot of that sort of that ding, 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 guitar that we know the edge for, he kind of copped that from Dave Gilmour in the first place. You know, you think of stuff like Run Like Hell, you know, he's doing that sort of a guitar thing in that already. So it's a little bit, you know, taking back what somebody else already stole. But I agree that that's not a great song. Coming Back to Life to me is the weakest song on the album. Really doesn't sound like Pink Floyd at all, which is funny because it's the one song that Dave Gilmour wrote completely on his own. Like there's no Rick Wright on it. There's no Polly Samson, no other outside writers on that song. It's just Dave Gilmour. Marooned, such a great instrumental. They won a Grammy for it. I think that's an important thing to point out, and rightly so too. I wish they still had the best rock instrumental Grammy, because they got rid of that a few years ago. I think it's a great category to have. But and then of course High Hopes at the end. I mean, just, it's an epic song. Oh, I forgot to mention Keep Talking. Keep Talking got a lot of radio airplay here in Australia when this album first came out. You'd hear it on the radio all the time. But and I love the Stephen Hawking bits in it. But High Hopes is absolutely the highlight of this record. The lyric is wonderful. I know a lot of people, you know, sort of crap on Polly Samson's lyrics. I like her lyrics on some of these songs, not so much on others, but this song is a wonderful lyric, I think. Musically, it's stately. It's Pink Floyd. It really, really is. It's got that grandeur to it. And the slide guitar solo is just Gilmour's best solo on this album, bar none. It's an incredible way to close out the album. Except that right at the end, as the song finishes, there's a little bit of dialogue at the end where Polly Samson's son Charlie hangs up on their manager Steve O'Rourke, sort of just filling in that whole sort of miscommunication theme that goes through the whole record. But I really enjoy this record. I like listening to this record. You know, it is definitely more enjoyable as a listen than some of the earlier Floyd, although I love that sort of more challenging earlier Floyd. This is a bit of an ear candy record for a Floyd fan, but in a good way. I think it doesn't sound knockoff the way that some of Momentary Lapse of Reason does. I think this sounds authentic. I think it's a really good album, and I agree with Tom. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10 as well.
Nice. All right. Well, I'll add a couple of things. I mean, I still think I love you know, that when you know, Tom, you were talking about how this was a big grunge era, right? And really what Pink Floyd does is they double down and make almost the most Floydy record they possibly can without Roger. I mean, without the Roger dynamic in it. I still think my favorite song between the two records is Learning to Fly. But there is a lot of good material on here. But yeah, it's this is the most anti-grunge record, corporate record even that you can imagine. Like Pink Floyd is just feeling like they are feeling like a big stuffy corporation. I mean, it's beautifully recorded. To me in a way, this feels like the Roxy Music Avalon of the Roxy Music catalog for Pink Floyd, right? This is the most austere and quiet, to the point where I really don't need those two instrumentals at all. Like the instrumentals drive me crazy. I was playing in the car today, driving around, and I realized, oh, I got to do this tonight. I wonder if my iPod has the Division Bell on it, right? And I go through, I go, oh, it does, great. Yeah, I don't have much time driving left, so I put it on. I'm listening to Cluster One, and like nothing happens for like a minute and a half. Typical Pink Floyd, you know, ambling into the room sort of thing, right? And there's just so little going on. You know, it's part of the modus operandi of this band that everybody's playing very understated and quiet. So when they do an instrumental, there's just not enough going on for me. I really need to hear more. But and I just to add to the mention of the drumming, like this is a very incredibly Nick Mason, Pink Floyd drumming type album, and the drums are recorded beautifully on here, right? From the ting of the hi-hats, everything about it, the toms and everything is languid, of course, on here as well. I mean, you mentioned on Pulse, yeah, you got to play something a little bit up tempo, but there's just really not very much up tempo on here at all. But that's fine. It's just a beautiful sort of ride, and again, it's so characteristic of Nick Mason, somewhat Rick, I would say, but more so David Gilmour. Like there's so much David Gilmour to this album that you are just hearing a really unique, characteristic band just go right inside the character of what they're doing. They don't care that it's 1994. They're turning in an absolute complete sort of Pink Floyd album. But I do feel also that there's a little bit of you are missing that driving creative spirit that we have a really big reason to make this album. To me, it sounds a little bit like the reason to make this album is to keep things going and to get out on tour and whatnot. And to that extent, I mean, I think this Storm Thorgerson album cover and the title of the thing, The Division Bell, is almost like it drags it further into the realm of creativity than would have been there in the first place. I think it's more creative looking than than A Momentary Lapse of Reason and even the title. So there's that intrigue and toughness and heft of the album cover and the title that is missing on this album because the album is so quiet. It's a very, very quiet, plush, Robert Palmer Power Station sort of situation. Not really, but definitely a Roxy Music Avalon sort of situation with this album. So yeah, I love it. I think it's you really got to love Pink Floyd to want to go to this place, because what you're getting is the you are getting the like I say, the more languid, the less creative, the less reason to be, the less sharp conceptually, although I love that the concept of this is actually subtle. I mean, it's kind of neat that it is subtle along the lines of communication. But yeah, you've got to really love Pink Floyd in 1994 to dial this in and to be in this place, because it is so peaceful and so quiet, and with High Hopes at the end being a complete metaphor for the whole album. I mean, it just that song is just wired the way that these guys are wired, and the previous bunch of songs is wired on the album. It almost serves like I say, as a miniature suite of the entire album in total. So yeah, I think I would give it an 8 as well. I really sort of like this this sort of the integrity of just digging in and doing this Pink Floyd sound. And even though there's so much noise around them and guest stars, and Bob Ezrin, of course, is in here and he's putting in his suggestions. He's got his, customary, he's in there on a song credit as well. But even though there is all that, they come out with this incredibly peaceful oasis of a Pink Floyd album. So I don't know. Anybody got anything to add?
I was going to say, they are, like you said, they're a country to themselves at this point. They are immune to trends.
Yeah.
They just do what they do. And I agree with you. I mean, the one thing we said about Momentary Lapse when we did that one was there's no edge. the edge is gone. I mean, that's what left with Roger, is everything is smooth as silk, well recorded. It sounds fantastic, but I agree with you, Martin. It's the one thing I do miss. You miss Roger in a way, because some of the lyrics, like Bicycle Legs was saying, I agree with him that High Hopes is a great lyric, but there's other songs on the record that aren't so great lyrically. And you think, wow, Roger probably could have distilled that 5 line into one, and made it fantastic. Because that's what his gift was. His lyric writing was just unbelievable, and his conceptual mind. And you're missing the conceptual mind. I mean, you can tell they're trying very hard to get a concept out of this. They're working hard, and it's sort of a loose communication vibe. But there's, you can tell they're trying hard, and it's to do it.
Yeah. I don't know,
So.
Daniel, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, no, I mean, you made some good points there, Martin. Yeah, yeah, it is a very quiet album for the most part. And it's funny that the two more up-tempo songs on this album are the two that I think we all agree are probably two of the weaker songs, with Take It Back and Coming Back to Life. You know, it's an interesting thing. And it's interesting that Floyd didn't go. I mean, I'm not surprised at all that they didn't go with the grunge trend and follow the sound, because they just were never going to do that. But the fact that they were still really successful, as you said, Martin, this album's triple platinum in the United States. That's 3 million copies sold at the height of grunge. You know, Pink Floyd is selling 3 million records. It just goes to show how Pink Floyd, as far as the whole public goes, were just a law unto themselves. They didn't have to follow the trends. They didn't have to, you know, do what the other progressive rock bands did in the 80s and completely change their sound and that sort of thing. You know, Pink Floyd, as I said, they were a law unto themselves. They could just do Pink Floyd, and the audience, the public, the general public would just come with them and continue to support them. And
you know,
that's
the other
a
thing they
rare
didn't
thing
do,
in
Daniel,
music.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that they didn't do is fall into the idea of cheap tricks and too much soundtracky stuff and too much dialogue and too many bells and whistles, right? They kept it a pretty serious and conservative album, right? But it's very melodic. It's light and melodic. I mean, one part, Poles Apart, is kind of interesting in that you get this languid, slow verses sort of thing, but then they have this break where, you know, certain unpredictable things happen. It's got kind of like those circus carnival sort of sounds, and then they come back in and they've sped up the riff, right? They've doubled time. So that's kind of, or not riff, the rhythm. So that's kind of an interesting thing. So some of the songs are unconventionally put together in terms of rule breaking that way, but there isn't a lot of literally carnival sounds. There isn't much in the way of those things that made Pink Floyd famous, right? I mean, what made Pink Floyd famous, very frankly, is the ear candy, right? That's what made it super interesting to people, right? Was when they would put in you know, any sort of soundtracking, sound effects type stuff or dialogue or whatever, right? And they stayed away from that for the most part on this album, right?
Yeah, with the notable exception of Poles Apart. But yeah, for the most part, they didn't use a lot of sound effects, a lot of dialogue, that sort of thing. They stuck with the music, and it works on this album, I think.
Yeah. Cool. Well, there you go, folks. So let us know what you think in the comments below. You know, whether this album is worthy of how much praise is it worthy of? Where would you put it against the Final Cut, for example, right? Or some of those early ones. We know the late 70s is pretty unassailable for these guys, but yeah, Final Cut, Momentary Left, you know, Endless River, of course, not that's what it's called, right? Endless River, yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking Iggy Pop, Endless Sea. But yeah, that's we actually did an episode of Pete's or was I on there? Anyways, I've done it somewhere else, but last album disaster sort of thing, and it's sort of really weird and messy that Pink Floyd goes out on that record. It's doesn't make a lot of sense, right? It's like UFO, the Salentino cuts, and Deep Purple turning to crime, although they're going to follow up. But yeah, that was a very messy asterisk of an album to end up on. But yeah, this album obviously is a bona fide true album. So there you go. Let us know what you guys think. We've got Tom. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like we said, High Hopes is the perfect way to end it.
Exactly.
That's perfect. Like, and then they had to do the Endless River, and you're like, no.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
But,
and the end of High Hopes is the cool way to end it too, right? So
right. So it's that was a bonus disc.
Yeah,
At least as
exactly.
a
Exactly.
yeah.
That's exactly what it sounds like. Yeah. So there you go. We've got a Ko-Fi and all that. You can join Patreon. And that, joining that gets you on to voting if you want to be on any of these panels and whatnot. But yeah, this was a blast. I think this was a good examination of this record. And until next time, go listen to some Pink Floyd.